Human trafficking has affected over 40 million people globally. In Malaysia, authorities identified 180 trafficking victims in 2022 alone, subjected to either sex work or forced labour. We delve into the plight of these victims. Few know more about this issue than Alia Zulaika. She's part of an organisation dedicated to rescuing trafficking victims. Till today, one case in 2018 stands out, when the victim was found too late.
Her body was really covered in bruises. There were pus and burn marks all over her body. Yeah, and unfortunately, she passed away just one day after her rescue. So we weren't able to actually get her full testimony, and that has impacted the prosecution aspect, because you don't have the main evidence, which is the testimony from the survivor.
Adelina Lisau was a young domestic worker from Indonesia who dreamt of providing for her family by working in Malaysia. She was still a teenager when she left home, and her family never heard from her ever since, until the news of her death from the abuse she suffered during her employment.
The police actually contacted the employer to bring her to the police station, and that was where our officers in Penang actually first met her. They have told me that it was a very horrifying sight. She really looked quite fearful of why she was there. Even when a policewoman tried to offer her a bottle of water, she actually had to look at her employer first in order for her to gain permission to drink. Only when the employer nodded her head and gave her that permission, only then she drank. And that's where we actually see that she really lost her sense of agency.
Adelina's case was one that gained international attention. The organisation involved in her rescue, the Naganita, has since set up a one-stop centre for survivors after they've been brought out of their place of abuse. It has assisted 99 people in nearly 1 year.
They don't really know why they are being brought out from their place of abuse. They've been told by their employers or their perpetrators that you are going to get arrested for not having documents. The police are there to put you in prison. You'll be detention. You'll be sent home. And so a lot of them come with this fear and confusion, and they're not able to actually provide their testimony there at that point of time, because so many things are running through your mind.
For those who are granted full protection orders, they're placed in 10 shelter homes nationwide as they undergo court proceedings against their perpetrators. 8 of these are government-run. The other 2 are operated by Tenaganita and Global Shepherds.
When a survivor comes into our shelter, the most common response that we kind of observe is the flight, fight or freeze response, which is quite common among those who have experienced trauma. So when they come in, we can see the manifestation through their behaviours.
Survivors typically remain in Global Shepherd's shelter for 6 to 8 months until their cases are resolved and they can be repatriated to their country of origin.
There are several activities that we put in place in the shelter that aims to regulate the trauma that they've experienced. So these are things like yoga, English classes, baking, cooking, with a little bit of empowerment sessions like awareness on trafficking. They find a lot of joy when they are gardening, and that's one of their favorite activities. From there, whatever they've produced, they cook their own traditional meals, or they just cook something just as simple as a stir-fried vegetable, and that will be the talk for the day, that the vegetable was the best that they have ever had.
But providing shelter support during this time is not without its challenges.
It sounds nice, but actually the whole process is really very intense, because we really need to ensure that when we hire staff, the staff is able and capable to provide that kind of quality services. For many that we see in the shelter, they don't even know what happened to them. They cannot define it as trafficking. For them, they feel that it's the norm. So that the understanding of their right as a domestic helper and what they should experience within the work that has been promised to them doesn't exist. So when they are abused and exploited, for them they feel that it's a common practice and it may have happened to others as well.
Kerajaan hari ini sesungguhnya kekal kuat hasrat dan tekadnya untuk meningkatkan usaha membenteras perdagangan orang, termasuk harapan untuk memperbaiki kedudukan Malaysia dalam penyelaian antarabangsa. Yang nak dilihatnya adalah kesungguhan kita untuk mengesan, tangkap, siasat, dakwa, sabit. Kalau itu dapat kita capai, saya yakin hasrat untuk keluar daripada lingkungan level 2 watchlist ini sangat cerah.
In Malaysia, there's a strong focus on prosecution, yet challenges remain for survivors to actively assist in convicting their perpetrators, largely due to extended court proceedings and prolonged stays in shelter homes.
For a lot of the survivors, they're not able to recall what had happened months ago, and if they have been through an abusive situation for many years, how do they remember what actually happened at what time and who did what? They block the memories out, so when you want them to recall something that they don't want to remember, it's very, very difficult. It was a traumatic experience to them, and to have to face your perpetrators in court, it's very a huge challenge for them. As shelter providers, we do try to help them mitigate these challenges, try to get them psychological help or counselors, or even our protection officers are there to actually help them cope with their emotions and actually tell them why it's important for them to actually go through this process, and also empower them with rights and other life-based skills. It's still a lengthy process that a lot of survivors do not want to take on.
Another gap involves diverging goals between law enforcers and survivors of trafficking. We meet with a criminologist who has extensively researched the mental state of survivors.
The enforcers want to prosecute the traffickers and bring them to justice. But the victims, from my research, most of them, their target is they want to go home. They want to work. You put me in a shelter. My family is not getting money. I'm not working. I don't know what is happening to them. They're very stressed. They're very worried. Children, maybe my children over there will be sold to someone else. Nobody is going to help me. We tend to say it's the most heinous crime and everything. It is a heinous crime. But if you ask the victim, sometimes they won't be telling you that.
In your conversations with survivors, have they expressed any particular hopes or needs or wishes to you?
A lot of them want to go home early. A lot of them, the sad thing is that they don't know their departure date. Nobody can tell. So that's why sometimes you hear cases where they do not want to testify or say anything adverse against the trafficker or anything, because they feel that by doing that, the case goes on, will be prolonged, and they will have to stay in the shelter for long. So you must remember, from the point of view of the victim, it's not having revenge against the trafficker. Maybe they may be bitter against the trafficker, but to prioritize going home and punishing the trafficker, most of them would prioritize going home first. Even if it means that, this person gets away.
Now, considering the issues at hand, can we then strike a balance between effective trafficking prosecution and safeguarding survivors' dignity?
I think we are still trying to figure out how to grapple with giving them a comfortable place and a comfortable living environment with this security issue. So perhaps we can learn from other countries on how to provide a better living condition, better shelter for victims if we want to shelter everyone. Also, the improvement, I say, would come from learning how to do a T-visa. Australia does that, and where the victim can work for a year also. So they work and they earn themselves, and all the expenses is on them, rather than we are the one who is providing everything for them. But of course, that autonomy part, giving them more autonomy, more choices, that part definitely need improvement.
I feel the survivor voices need to be amplified. they carry a powerful story about the experience, and they see things differently. Their perspective might be different. They may see prevention from a different point of view because of the experience they've gone through. So it's engaging them more and bringing them to the platform where they can actually be part of the solution to create better policies, stronger policies, I would say, more inclusive policies.